gmail.com. From our compound, from the West Coast to the East Coast to worldwide, both on the internet and terrestrial radio, you're listening to Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, After Dark.
And we are back. Boy, I just barely made it back in time with my cup of tea. I tell you what, I drink more tea than I ever have in my life the last couple months. You know, doing this show, I tell you, it's gotten crazy.
Yeah, it keeps you busy, and I don't know how you do it with all the things you do. You're definitely a multitasker extraordinaire.
I found out I can live on about 3 hours sleep a day. Because doing the show, a lot of people just don't realize it. You know, I'm usually up to 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, responding to emails, talking to radio stations, whatever I have to do. And next thing I know, then I go to bed. My wife gets up at 4:30. I'm awake at that point. I try to take a 2-hour nap, and then I'm up doing what I normally do, booking guests and, you know, interviewing people to see if they would be, you know, good enough to come on the show.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a wonder that you get 3 hours sleep. I don't know how you do it with the sleep you do, and it's just wow. But yeah, I do know that you do a lot of things that is amazing me that you can do it all at once. That I can barely get onto an app over here to talk to people. It keeps kicking me up, and I'm on now.
Oh yeah, well you know what? The Borgs are coming. You remember like Star Trek? Do you remember, you know, the Next Generation and the Borg and all that stuff? Well, guess what? A pilot looks out his side cockpit window out of his Airbus A320S, and he sees a cube just flying off his wing. Now, we're talking like a cube, a large cube. Now, this is interesting because it doesn't look anything like a UFO. It doesn't look like a cigar. It doesn't look like, well, a triangle. It's not as big, though, as a Walmart store, but it's a cube. Now, do you think the Borg finally found the Earth?
Wow. That, you know, it's amazing. I seen the cube you're talking about. You know, that thing's moving pretty good speed, too. But, yeah, that's a good question. Are these cyborgs, are they slowly invading us right under our noses?
I don't know, but this thing also was moving at a high rate of speed compared to the Airbus 320S, which actually kind of travels at a good clip. But this thing just, you know, made mincemeat out of the Airbus. But, again, could you imagine? You're just sitting there. I mean, pilots see all kinds of strange things. They don't go around telling people about it. But to see a cube, that's kind of interesting.
That is very interesting. That was an interesting video. You know, it kind of reminded me of a video that was filmed by the military, or somebody secretly filmed it, and this was like 15, 20 years ago, and it looked similar to it, only it was real close to the ground. I think it even skipped off the ground.
Oh, yeah. Well, a man who kept having a bad headache for over 30 years finally goes into the hospital, the ER, and they examine him. They take x-rays. The doctors were in total shock. For 30-some years, this guy had, you ready for this?
I'm afraid to hear it.
A pencil up his nose.
Oh my goodness. Wow. 30 years.
30 years he was having these headaches. So evidently he had a short pencil or something when he was in school or whatever. How could you put a pencil up your nose and not realize that you had something? Wouldn't your breathing be affected?
Well, yeah, you would think you would get at least a sinus infection now and again, or all the time, or some kind of infection, or you would think your body would fight against it. Or boy, that's just amazing that he had to be in misery.
Well, how about the guy, we talked about last week, it had a tapeworm in his brain for 10 years.
Oh, yeah. And, you brought up another story. Remember the lady had, or maybe it might have been a guy, but they had a little bag of weed up their nose for, I don't know, 10, 20 years as well.
People, when they're young, I guess, kids do weird things. When I was in grade school, there used to be a kid in one of my classes, Fred something. I can't even remember his last name. He used to actually stick color crayons up his nose. And one day he stuck one up his nose so far they had to take him to the hospital to remove it. Did that stop him from doing it? No. The next day after he came home from the hospital, having the embarrassment of having a color crayon removed out of his nose, he did it again.
Oh my God! He was a glutton for punishment, not just from his parents, probably, but also from the humility of going through the hospital again to get a crayon pulled out. That's yuck.
Can you imagine? You're in a town in Spain, and there's a storm, but now the whole town kind of gets awashed with sea foam after the storm. Now, isn't that telling you that the sea levels are rising for that to happen? The picture I'm looking at, it shows a couple feet high of foam all through this small town, which, is about a mile away from the shore.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've seen some high foam before, especially sometimes on Lake Erie at just weird conditions. But, yeah, that's a good indicator that something is off if you're getting that high of a wall of foam.
Well, a finance company, I'm not going to mention their name, but on their robocall, calling people up, remind them that they were past due on their credit card, somehow called a couple thousand customers repeatedly over and over and over and over. Wow. Thousands of times. Now, I wonder if they could be connected with that collection agency that sent out 55,000 collection letters.
That's a good point. Maybe they have the same management, and because they like to do things repeatedly. That is amazing. Again, you would think after the first 100 or maybe 1,000, somebody would spot an error there and be like, "Hey, this is kind of repetitive. We better check this." But I guess not.
Well, could you imagine though? Somebody's calling you on your phone repeatedly, right, day and night. Thousands of times, just to remind you that you're past due on your credit card. Wouldn't that be annoying too?
Oh, that's severe harassment, at least, I would think. Yeah, and supposedly those calls, I thought, were monitored. And you would think that the supervisor somewhere, is seeing, hey, this number's popping up, well, not 10 times, but thousands, might want to look into this.
Oh, yeah. Well, people, if you live in Florida, I hate to say it, the iguanas might be in short supply. Because there was a group of people, back 2 weeks ago when it got kind of cold, iguanas, after it gets down to around about 40 degrees, they kind of go into a hibernation state because they don't generate any heat. So they just kind of, at that point, they can't hold on to the trees. So they just drop like nothing. And there was a group of people who figured, hey, why not? People eat anything. Well, and they sold on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist iguanas. Now, you could either buy it dressed out or you could buy it. But some people were upset because they thought they were buying a dead iguana. And as soon as they got it in their car or got it home to dress it out, the iguana started, coming back and walking away.
There goes my supper. I actually seen the video online somewhere where they was barbecuing them and selling them. I was like, somebody had a real windfall there with that stuff. The poor iguanas, even though they're evasive, that's just brutal.
Oh, I know. And you know what? An airline, and I'm not mentioning their name, says they're sorry for forcing a passenger on board take a pregnancy test. Now, it doesn't go into any details. I don't know what was going on, but the airline pilot, the captain of the plane, forced a passenger to take a pregnancy test on board.
What have we become? What have we become? Have these planes become their own country to force somebody to take a pregnancy test? I'm sure, but they don't have. I don't see why anybody would have to do that, and why anybody would have to think, well, you're going to have to take it. That's just, I don't know. That's bizarre.
Well, the captain is totally in charge because they're in international airspace. The same way if you're out on the ship, right? The captain is the rule because they're in international waters. So, I mean, just think about that. Well, hundreds of starlings were found dead on a major side road.
That's another thing, Gary. There's been a lot of reports within the last week of masses of flocks of birds dying all around. And again, you've touched on it before. Maybe it's the magnetism of the earth or whatever is going on, but something's really messing them up.
Well, it could be the magnetic field of the earth, because it's shifting. I mean, we got pelicans, we got all these other type of birds, or cranes, for example, being seen in locations they never have before. I mean, these birds are losing their way, and I think that's what's happening with the beehives. First they were blaming it on, the insecticides. Now, some scientists are saying, no, it's a magnetic field is changing on the earth. They're losing their direction.
Yeah, I think there is a lot to that, actually. I think you're right. And, listen, it's going to affect a lot of things, and it will throw the whole balance of everything off. And the effect of that is what could be scary.
It could be. Well, you know what? Fly me to the moon. Daikon seeks life partner for a lunar trip.
Fly me to the moon. That's, first of all, I think we better get to the moon and make sure we can even get back to the moon. But, yeah, that's something else. That's like, boy, that would be something.
Well, this guy is a billionaire, so he's looking for a mate that's willing to go to the moon.
Hey, why not? Boy, wouldn't that be something if they got stuck up there?
Well, you know what? According to this $1 million research grant, cat lovers are less likely to go to church, the research suggests.
What the money they spend on some of these researches that they do is just mind-boggling. Like, what was the reason for it? Like that one there, but I don't know. Who might argue with that? I guess the research shows it.
Well, maybe somebody just sits in the room, and figured, okay, how can we get a grant? What hasn't been done before? Oh, I know. Cat lovers are likely not, But then how about dog lovers? And then how about guinea pig lovers? I mean, come on. This is getting bizarre.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Well, they say Justin Bieber on drugs? Again?
No.
Well, a security check, says that, yeah, he was.
Yes, he was. I couldn't imagine.
Now, did you see that? What I sent you? Did it ever finally show up? The video clip about this virus.
Yeah, it did. That was kind of freaky. That reminded me of something. It looked like it was a person was going in a seizure.
That's one of the symptoms, and that's not the only one I've seen. I've actually seen them in, like in China, on the news, in the hospital. 1 minute they're kind of normal but sick, and the next thing they know, they're kind of like going through these weird seizures and doing all this weird stuff, almost like watching The Walking Dead, the zombies when they start going into a zombie. But did you hear and did you see what they're kind of saying, that how many people could be infected in 2 weeks' time in our country?
Oh, yeah, that figures, boy, oh boy, if that's the truth, that's scary, because when it's like big dominoes that's going real fast, like how do you slow that down? Because if that's true, it's just That's mind-boggling how that could just multiply and just keep going so fast.
Well,